On a March day in 1923, Dusolina Giannini was stepping into the elevator on her way to a lesson with Marcella Sembrich. A large man rushed in behind her, got off at the same floor, and pushed into the studio ahead of her, very polite. Madame Sembrich introduced him. "So you're Miss Giannini," was the curt acknowledgement of the introduction. "I've come for you." He was Kurt Schindler, conductor of the Schola Cantorum, and his soprano, Anna Case, does this sound familiar, was indisposed. He'd tried to get Alma Gluck. She had an engagement. He tried Hulda Lishanska. She recommended another Sembrich pupil, loaned her an evening dress, and that's how, on 24-hour notice, the career of the most famous member of the Giannini family was launched. The program of the Schola Cantorum that evening in Carnegie Hall was to feature a group of old Italian songs arranged by Giannini Sadero. One of them was a lullaby, Fa la lana bambin, and we hear it this afternoon as recorded by Dusolina Giannini less than a year after that unscheduled debut. Everybody enjoyed Miss Giannini singing mightily, Richard Aldrich reported next day in the New York Times. The voice is one of beautiful and peculiarly rich timbre. W.J. Henderson in The Sun was in like vein. "This young woman awoke real enthusiasm," he said. And at 21, Dusolina Giannini was on her way. Offers for recitals and symphony engagements poured in, more than she could fill. She made her operatic debut as Aida in Hamburg, September 12, 1925. 3 years later, she made her London bow in the same role with the company of La Scala, opposite Pertile, and the next year she recorded the entire opera with Pertile and the Scala. From that recording of 40 years ago, we hear a few measures of the end of Aida's aria, which closes the first scene. Numi pietà, love, fatal power, mystic and dread, break thou my heart, now let me die. Dusolina Giannini's first Butterfly was in London, and all tenderness. She recorded the first act love duet with Marcel Wietrich, and if you can take it in German, here's a fragment of one of her solo passages. 4 years before she came to the Metropolitan, her son Tucci was immortalized on wax. Her partner, or perhaps we should say her adversary, Beniamino Gigli. The venerable critic Herman Klein, who went back to Patti and was critic of the Sunday Times London for 20 years, from 1881 to 1901, reviewed this record in 1933 as follows. When two artists of the first rank join forces with the determination to put their shoulders to the wheel, it would be strange indeed were the outcome anything less than superlative. Here's the scene for Santuzza and Turiddu from Cavalleria Rusticana, sung about as perfectly as it can be by two singers of supreme gift. Normas are a rare commodity in any man's opera house. In 85 years, the Metropolitan has had only 6: Lily Lehmann, Rosa Poncel, Gina Chigna, Zinka Milanov, Maria Callas, and next season, Joan Sutherland. Mr. Gatti wanted Flagstaff to do this opera, which he worshipped, and our daughter of the gods actually studied the part, but she couldn't take the recitatives. 15 years later, Madame Flagstaff said with that incredible and sometimes devastating candor of hers, "On the whole, I think it was wise of me not to get mixed up in Italian opera." Dusolina Giannini was the next nomination for the Druid Priestess, and a date was actually set, February 26, 1936. But the opera that night turned out to be Boheme, with Bori, Martinelli, Tchaikovsky, Lazzari, and Pinza. And Dusolina never sang Norma at the Metropolitan or anywhere else. This record of Casta Diva, which she made in Milan with the orchestra and chorus of La Scala, makes us the losers. It will be noted, W.R. Moran writes in The Record Collector, that Giannini, like few others, is careful to follow the markings of the score. The high A's are sung as one note, with sforzandi as marked, instead of staccati as so often sung. She sang Donna Anna in Don Giovanni with Pinza under Bruno Walter at Salzburg. Toscanini chose her for Mistress Ford in his Falstaff there. Vienna heard her first Carmen and she repeated the part under Leo Blech in Berlin. There were 2 concert performances of Parsifal with Monteur in San Francisco, and the only memento of her career which Dusolina Giannini has kept is a cablegram from Siegfried Wagner inviting her to sing Kundry at Bayreuth. Hitler fixed that. 25 years ago, she inaugurated the New York City Opera Company's first season with Tosca. Now let's hear how beautifully Dusolina Giannini could paint in miniature. Estrellita. The mother of the Giannini family, Antonetta Briglia, came to this country when she was only 7 years old, playing violin in a small family ensemble which brought perhaps the first serious music to many a small American town. It was a rugged life, but in Detroit, their guest soloist was a tenor who was good enough to sing subsequently in the Mapleson Company with Patti and Schumann Heink. He was Ferruccio Giannini, and they fell in love and were married. They settled in Philadelphia and opened a small theater, modestly called the Verdi, in South Philadelphia, that glorious, jumping Italian neighborhood in the city of brotherly love. The 4 surviving children, 2 had died in infancy, were musical and often pressed into service. We said earlier Dusolina's operatic debut was in Hamburg. Actually, it was in her father's theater at the age of 12. He'd had her standing on a table and singing at the age of 3, but she later sang Azucena to his Manrico. She thought it was her impassioned reading and was very much hurt when she found out it wasn't, when she brought down the house with "Tu sei mio figlio," "You are my son." It may have been the proximity of the headquarters of the Victor Talking Machine Company in Camden, New Jersey, just across the river, but Signor Ferruccio was the first singer ever signed to make operatic records on disc. Somewhere along the way, he'd brought over 60 musicians, which he called the Royal Marine Italian Band, and he toured them through the United States, Cuba, and Canada. Like the Holy Roman Empire, which was neither holy nor Roman, the band was neither loyal nor marine, but Italian it was. And when it disbanded after 3 years, some of the members found chairs in the recently formed Philadelphia Orchestra. Max de Schonze, writing about the elder Giannini in Opera News, said, "He lived in a pioneer world, and his tremendous and optimistic vitality found him ever ready to take a chance. He disliked anything that failed to suggest complete independence," unquote. To wit, he hesitated not at all to program himself, a lyric tenor of the Bonci variety, in the Toreador song from Carmen. Why let the baritone get away with that plum, indeed? And Ferruccio Giannini made at least one sublime contribution to the phonographic art. With his Royal Marine Italian Band, he made a record of the Miserere from Trovatore, with the hapless Leonora replaced by a nameless cornet. Now, friends, I didn't expect you to believe that one, so I brought along the record this afternoon, and here are the final measures of one of the greatest scenes in all opera by Ferruccio Giannini and the Royal Marine Italian Band. Dusolina's older sister, Eufemia, found her real vocation in teaching. She's Madame Gregory of the faculty of the Curtis Institute in Philadelphia, and 3 of her pupils are on the current roster of the Metropolitan: Anna Moffo, Frank Guerrera, and Ron Botcher. Madame Gregory's performing career was cut short by the First World War. She'd gone to Italy to study in 1914. The family was close. We weren't just allowed to associate with anybody, Madame Gregory once said. But Mama and the 2 little boys went along. Dusolina and Papa stayed behind. And Eufemia made her debut as Mimi in Turin, the city where La Boheme had its world premiere only a score of years before. Dusolina has followed her sister into teaching, and for some years now has conducted her master classes in Zurich. Francesco, Dr. Francesco Giannini, practices psychiatry in Far Hills, New Jersey, is a Sunday cellist, and finds time for weekend chamber music sessions. Vittorio, at the time of his death 2 years ago, was head of the North Carolina School of the Arts. He'd taught composition at Juilliard, and his opera, The Servant of Two Masters, based on the Goldoni comedy, was produced posthumously by the New York City Opera. His Taming of the Shrew was produced on NBC TV and by the New York City Opera Company. And The Scarlet Letter had its world premiere in Hamburg with Dusolina as Hester. She also sang his Requiem, written in memory of their mother, in Vienna. And we're going to close our program this afternoon with one of Vittorio Giannini's lovely songs, Tell Me, O Blue, Blue Sky.
Tell me, oh blue, blue sky, why did we part? Tell me, has bled. Tell what is left in life, since love has fled, since love has fled.
That was Leonard Warren, and he made his Los Angeles debut with Dusolina Giannini. Both Leonard Warren and Vittorio Giannini are gone, but their song is still with us. We've seen and heard this afternoon how music holds a family together. Perhaps it's also the surest immortality.